Yeah, so basically, I'm making a book for career seekers. So basically, it will contain interviews of various professionals from different professions. And so basically, it's meant to give an idea to people for what to do in the future. So, like, basically, I'm in 11th. So basically, I was having a lot of trouble deciding what to do. And so it's just going to give a perspective to people.
That's great. It's a great idea.
Thank you. So firstly, I would request you to introduce yourself, your company, industry, and your work experience.
Yeah, so my name is Deepti Cheeda. I currently live in San Francisco. I've been here for the last 15 years. I by education I studied computer engineering in India, in Bombay actually, and after doing my undergrad in Bombay, I came to the US to do my master's. I did my master's at Carnegie Mellon, where I did again master's in computer science. And then after graduation, I moved to the west coast of United States to start working in some tech companies. Initially, I worked at Microsoft for some time, and then I moved to San Francisco. Microsoft was in Seattle, Washington, and then shortly after I moved to San Francisco, I worked at a few smaller companies, and then after that, I am most recently working at Facebook, also now called Meta. So that's kind of like a very high level view of the industry that I've been in. I've been in technology and software for the last 15 years.
So why did you specifically choose this industry?
That's a great question. I mean, it was mostly because of my education. That's what I had studied throughout my engineering as well as my master. So that's what I was like the most skilled and trained in. And it was also something that I enjoyed doing. So, from a job prospects and opportunities, obviously, there were lots of opportunities in the US, or there still are in this field. It's very heavily and actively growing. Software is kind of everywhere these days, and there are lots and lots of software companies. So, just the ability to get jobs is really easy. You still have to like put in the effort, but relatively speaking, it's been a growing industry, and it's been really great being part of that growth.
So can you give us some idea about how your industry has shaped over the last 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you like look back, pretty much around when I was in college, that's really when the internet was taking off in a big way. And I think that changed a lot basically about the industry. It really fueled a lot of growth. The internet, or what we call is like Web 2.0, really triggered like a lot of new companies to start, like the whole .com boom happened. And over the last 20 years, let's say 15 to 20 years, you've seen like really large tech companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, Amazon. Like these companies have really like in a way taken over the world, and grown in size, grown in the value they add to the world. Their valuations have grown significantly. Their company sizes have grown. They've hired more and more people. The products that they have built are being used by like billions of people across the world now. And that growth doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, because just more and more people have access to internet now. They are able to communicate more to each other using the internet. They're able to do a lot of online transactions. So it's just brought a lot of convenience to a lot of people. Or things that had to be done manually earlier, now you can just do it with the touch of a button. It also triggered like a lot of the growth. I mean, shortly after the web 2.0, or like the internet um, boom. It was followed by the mobile boom. So essentially, the first iPhone was introduced in like '07 or '08, and then shortly after, like now, for the last 10 years, like mobile phones have become ubiquitous. That has also fueled a lot of growth. Essentially, now giving, like, I think there's like this popular quote, right? Bill Gates put like a laptop in every person's hand, and like Steve
Yeah.
Jobs put like phone in every person's hand. And like the phone especially, like, has been like such a powerful device. It's been pretty much whatever you could do on a computer 20 years ago, now you can do on a phone, which is in your hand, it's with you all the time. So it's just brought a lot of convenience to a lot of people, and that's what's fueled the growth of the industry.
So how do you foresee the industry in the next 5 to 10 years? So where do you see it going?
I think this is going to continue. I mean, there are like, I was just talking at a very high level, but like within the industry also, there are like sort of sub industries, if you may. There's almost like a sub industry for all the fintech stuff. There's a sub industry for all the AI stuff that's taking over now. Pretty new stuff in the sense that artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these things are now becoming more and more advanced. Like you're starting to get like autonomous vehicles now. We're starting to, do space exploration in a more commercial way. All of this is being powered by computers, basically, right? So there are almost like these sub industries now within the software industry, like it's and there's a whole cloud industry essentially now, more
Hmm.
and more computations and everything instead of happening. Earlier every company would have to buy their own machines and do their own products, do product development in house. But now a lot of that can be sort of outsourced to like the cloud. Like a lot of the computation just happens in the cloud, which is a lot more efficient, and that has fueled like the startup industry in a big way. Even a small startup can like essentially with just like 3 or 4 engineers
Hmm.
build like massive apps that can be used by like millions of people, right? So um, that kind of opportunity never existed in a way, like maybe 20 years ago. You
Hmm.
needed like a lot more manpower to be able to build something that would be used by millions of people. um, so it's becoming more accessible, I would say, to the masses, right? That, and then there's the whole open source industry where you actually can get access to a lot of code and tools and software just for free, because it's out there, anybody can use it. And that has also like triggered like so much innovation, because again, it's just accessible, which it wasn't 20 years ago. So going forward, I feel like this industry, I mean, some might feel, oh my God, it's already grown so much. And some of these companies are like $1 trillion companies right
Hmm.
now. But I think if I look at the next 20 years, I think this growth is not slowing down anytime soon. There's a lot more ahead in terms of what can be done. Um, and there's a big appetite for it,
Hmm.
essentially, especially when a lot of the developing countries like India, Africa, people there start getting access to internet and mobile phones. Like, this is something they didn't have for the last century, and like,
Hmm.
once they start getting access so easily, you're going to see like another big surge of like growth.
Okay. So could you please throw some light on the challenges you faced during the initial years of your career, and how can people avoid or overcome these kind of challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think essentially it's there are like challenges at every point, like in any career. I think
Hmm.
in this particular career, I think some of the challenges that typically people will face is around, let's say, getting admission in like really good colleges, which are like top colleges for education, for computer science education. So it's like really, really competitive, for example. So it can be hard to get in like IITs, for example,
Hmm.
or some such colleges. But now I think because of all this growth, there are like a lot more colleges you could apply than you could like 20 years ago. There's a lot of like online courses you can take, which
Yeah.
again didn't exist back then. So Coursera and like the Udemy, and there's so many like online academies where again it's just like way more accessible. So someone is really keen and interested, like there's a lot they can do without like in case they're not able to get into these top colleges, like if they are motivated enough, they can
Hmm.
still go and get the education they want, and it'll still be like a high quality education. uh Second thing is like jobs and stuff. Like yes, of course, like I was saying, it has been easier to get jobs in this industry than probably other industry because it's growing so fast. There's always like more demand than there
Hmm.
is supply for software engineers and professionals. So that has helped, but at the same time, the job interviews and stuff tend to be much harder compared to other industries because there's more like thorough assessments companies want to do before they hire people, and because it's a very technical field, uh, a lot of the assessment can actually be done in a very objective way. So maybe in
Hmm.
a lot of other fields your assessments will be more subjective, or it's more based on what the interviewer thinks of you, based on how you present yourself, or like how your communication skills are
Yeah.
and things like that, like more soft skills. But in the software field, I think it's more about your ability than your presentation. So literally, like I've walked into interviews wearing jeans and t-shirts and like really casual clothes, and like a lot of those things just don't matter in this
Hmm.
industry. What really matters is like your ability to think and problem solve, and how rational are you, how logical are you, like, can you come up with algorithms, can you write good high quality code, things like that. And so a lot of the interviews have now been tailored to be able to assess those qualities in the candidates. And again, like you of course now need to be able to crack those interviews
Hmm.
and prepare for them accordingly, etc. So it can be hard for some people, um, especially if you want to get into like a really good company, or like a company which it has a very big high reputation for taking only like top candidates, etc. But at the same time, like there are tons and tons of like startups and smaller companies, and so like I think you'll be assured that you'll get a job somewhere. You can at least
Hmm.
like start your career very easily, and like the pay scales are really good. Like the money is really amazing in terms of like the quality of life that you can have at a very very young age.
Hmm.
Like you probably be making like more money than like your previous generation did, like much later in their career, for example, right? So
Hmm.
from that standpoint, it's amazing. It's just that uh like it's again goes back to how motivated you are as a person. If you are, then you continue to keep upgrading your skills, and then like move around, go to another company which is better, and keep growing in your career.
So, what kind of job opportunities can youngsters expect over the next few years?
Yeah, I think I covered a little bit of this, but
Hmm.
essentially, like the industry is growing. Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of demand, and there are just not enough qualified individuals. Um, and so I think this is a great time actually. I envy like my cousins and a few other folks who are in university right now, because there's just so much they have access to. They're able to do software projects that we weren't able to do 10 years ago, just because
Hmm.
everything is so easily available. And then like in a way, like uh, even getting into a lot of these big tech companies has been much easier now because there's such a much higher demand. um, so I think like both, not just in America, but in like all across the world, I think the job prospects are like really, really good. In fact, I would actually say that the job prospects are actually better in other countries. With a lot of the COVID and the pandemic, one big shift that we're seeing is this shift to remote work. And
Hmm.
so a lot of companies, actually, to reduce costs, they are actually moving and allowing folks to work remotely, or moving, like, opening remote offices in smaller cities, in other countries. So, like, expansion, global expansion has like been a big shift to Europe and India, and Australia, and like lots of other countries where traditionally you didn't have that much presence. um, and I think even like the startup industry in India, for example, is like really
Hmm.
booming right now.
Yeah.
So in general, like, I think if you compare like just the purely like the number of like jobs available today versus what was available 20 years ago, I think you'll see like a huge exponential like increase, which I think says that there's a huge demand.
So to sum it all up, our this last question. So what would you suggest to students to study and work in India or to study abroad? So as you said, you studied in India as well as the US.
That's a great question. I think the Indian system is a little different, quite different actually from the US system when it comes to education. So, I mean, I was lucky enough to have that opportunity to be able to go abroad and study. I think if somebody has that opportunity, I would highly encourage them to take that opportunity, because it just broadens your view. It gives you different perspectives. You learn like a lot of different life skills as well. It's not just all about education. You become more independent. um, from an education standpoint, like I said, I think 10-15 years ago there was definitely a huge difference. Now, with a lot of like access,
Hmm.
where you can like self learn and things like that, if someone's motivated, that they can do a lot actually, even just sitting in India. So I think that like gap is reducing actually. But at the same time, I feel like you know it all depends on the individual and what they want to do long term. If their goal is that like they want to go abroad and live abroad, and work abroad, then I think the education abroad is really going to help them get there faster, in a
Hmm.
way. But like, let's say they want to come back to India and then they want to settle in India long term. I feel like now there are a lot of opportunities in India where you don't really need to go abroad. um, and like you should be still able to have a really great career in India. A lot of these companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they still have large offices in India as well.
Hmm.
So you should be also able to have a similar career in India now. I think this was probably not possible 15-20 years ago, but now it is. So I think both options are there essentially. I think if you have the opportunity and the financial means to study abroad, I would encourage people to take that opportunity and broaden their perspectives. And then you can always come back later, if you come back to India later if you really want to. And then that experience will always again be very highly valued.
So last thing, I would just like to ask you to maybe for some golden rules somebody should keep in their mind when like starting or going into the job market. Maybe something you, some key advice or something you think like you lacked or you should have had.
When interviewing, or like when
No,
when
in general, like entering the job market or something like that,
hmm, um
or even during working.
yeah, I think people sort of overestimate sort of intelligence and things like that, and oh, I'm not that smart, or like I'm not that like intelligent to this field.
Hmm.
And actually, I think the biggest thing that a lot of people lack is just like a good work ethic, and the drive or the motivation to do things. Like the willpower actually is actually way more valuable than your intelligence in many ways, I think. So I guess my golden rule will be like, you know everything is achievable, you just have to try harder in this industry. nobody's a rocket scientist, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist, to be honest, to have a great career. You just have to try harder and not give up, and you need to have that motivation.
So I guess that was it. Thank you for your time. It was really great talking to you. And it's really given me a good idea about the industry. So,
Yeah, it was great chatting with you as well.
so on a side note, I would like to ask you if I can upload the interview on YouTube if it's fine with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Oh,
thanks.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hope this helps you in your
Yeah, I'll send you the
project.
copy. Yeah, I'll send you the copy once it's ready.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you.